Hey guys, welcome back to Holy Ghost Therapy. Today we're going to be doing the Nephilim Theory Overview Part 2. In the last one, we went over the first section of the book, and in this video, we're going to be just summarizing that and then wrapping everything up. Just to quickly reintroduce myself, my name is Govasana Rinas, and this is my YouTube channel for my ministry. We talk about all things spiritual, all things that's considered hidden knowledge, and all things that's considered supernatural. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. So part 1 I will have linked in the description below, but we basically just went over all of the pagan gods, all of the pagan spiritualities, and the origins and connections to the fallen angels. The Nephilim theory itself is that the fallen angels are the Anunnaki of Mesopotamia. I gave my reasonings for that, and we'll be diving deeper into that in the future on this page and in our Nephilim Theory Club, which I'll be explaining more about in the end. So I also want to add that this is an overview. I'm not reading the whole book right now, and I'm not going over every single detail. I just thought that this would be a really good guide for people who have the book or for people who are interested in the book so that you have a better understanding. So we wrapped up the Star of David and we were getting into the Oneness idols. So Oneness is a religion and spirituality that tends to go under the radar a lot because a lot of people think that it's not even a religion or that it's kind of just more of a state of mind than anything that could be considered pagan. But what's interesting is that in itself is like the oldest form of paganism, to believe that there is really no God and that we are, if anything, going to reincarnate, and that there's no good or bad really, and all that, those sort of things. And the oneness spiritualities is not as new and new age as you may think it is. So let's go ahead and get into it. In the book, we start off with Buddha. So a lot of people are familiar with Buddhism, and if anything, a lot of people think it's mostly just meditating and living in a more mindful way. But the truth is that Buddhism is actually a branch of Hinduism. In Buddhism, they have the same gods that you will find in Hinduism, and some of them literally just even have the same exact names. So the main Buddhist theology and idea that you can achieve a state of enlightenment to where you can reach what they call nirvana is not biblical and it's not Christian. I want to also reiterate, I'm not trying to demonize anybody or say anybody's wrong or you should do this. I am simply explaining what these things are from a Christian perspective, because unfortunately a lot of people who are in these groups are explaining things to Christians as if it's not what it really is, and as if a Christian can be part of, for example, Buddhism or Hinduism, when they can't. And those are two conflicting spiritualities and religions. And I just don't appreciate the deception. So I'm clearing that up. I stated that in the first video, and I just want to restate that here. So also in Buddhism, you may hear they don't worship Buddha. They say that a lot because they worship the same exact Hindu trinity that you see in Hinduism. Buddha was Hindu. That was how that goes. So no, they don't worship Buddha. That is a misconception. But it's not that they don't worship anybody, and they worship this universe. It is a branch of Hinduism, just like Zoroastrianism, which I know I just said that wrong. There's actually a lot of religions that are branches of Hinduism because of how we talked about in the first video, how Hinduism and the Anunnaki religion of Sumeria and Mesopotamia are like the first religions. So a lot of things are directly taken from Hinduism and just in different languages. So you'll find that. I'm sure you noticed that trend in the last video because I made sure to point that out. And we are going to kind of talk about that today too. So next we have the yin yang symbol and Taoism. So this is part of Buddhism and Confucianism, and it's part of Chinese philosophy. The entire idea of the yin yang symbol is that there's no good or bad. According to their mythology, the yin and yang emerged from the chaos at creation, forming the basis of balance in the universe. Their constant interaction is believed to shape life and nature. The black and white shapes flowing into each other with a small dot on the opposite side symbolize how yin and yang carry a piece of each other and rely on balance rather than dominance. So, so this requires the belief in no true creator, no absolute truth, and no true idea of good and bad. This directly conflicts with the Christian point of view and the Bible. So it's easy to think it's just about balance and balancing your own self and your own wellness, but that's just not the truth. And like I've stated, if you're somebody who's heard of these things, like I know you've heard of Buddhism and you probably never heard that there's gods there. Like you've never heard these parts of the yin yang symbol. Like you may just think it's just a Chinese symbol, but they don't explain everything around it, which is fair. I guess you don't just explain everything about yourself to somebody or just everything about your belief immediately when you meet somebody. But there's a whole lot to it that a lot of Christians, will put a yin yang tapestry up or something and not realize what they're doing. So it's just important to know. It's just really important to know these things. So that's going to take us into section 2. You have made it. Congratulations. Okay, so section 2 is basically, in my opinion, just why I wrote this. Like, what is the point? So what? Why does this matter? I'm going to tell you. So first of all, I made it clear that the name of God has been sought after by the devil since the beginning. The name of God is very serious, and that's why, as I talked about in some of my other videos on this page, God never told us his personal name. A lot of people are unfortunately being misled by these different groups and cults that are telling you that one of the Hebrew words that God used to describe himself is his name, and it's not. And so when we go into things like saying Yahweh is God's name, it's important to know that that name is connected directly to when Elijah was living, and Elijah had to destroy the Asherah poles. And it's dangerous to try to use a name for God the Father, let me clarify, because you can easily end up being attached to the wrong theology or being misled because he never actually told us his name. What we do know is that his only begotten son's name was Yeshua. You can say Jesus Christ because that's the English form, but that is how translations work. So we do know Jesus's name, but we don't know the Father's name. So what's my point there? It is true that there was a point where polytheism started to shift more to monotheism. For example, like I just said, you can end up getting attached to the wrong theology. A lot of people will tell you that Yahweh actually had a wife named Asherah. And so that was because the Israelites were living around the Canaanites, and the Canaanites were worshiping somebody whose name was El, and they were also worshiping Baal, and Baal and El had a wife. And what was her name? Her name was Asherah, literally. When that happened, the Israelites stayed in monotheism, and then other pagan spiritualities began also practicing monotheism. Not all of them, but a lot of them shifted into it. For example, as I kind of talked about in the last video, Islam, 300 years after Jesus lived is when Muhammad was born, and the Quran was created. And they went from polytheism to monotheism. As we talked about in the last video, the pre-Islamic Arabic religion was very similar to Hinduism and very similar to the religion of the Anunnaki. But what ended up happening was they do that and they replace in their pagan spiritualities the female goddesses with male gods. That ends the story of the female goddesses. So, for example, if, say I'm writing a book about two guys, man A and man B, and man A and man B are best friends. And then I say, man B is like a better character than man A. I'm going to get rid of man A. And then if I choose to get rid of man A in favor of man B, man A's story has stopped. So man B's story is going to continue evolving. Man B did this, man B did that. Next season, man B did this. Man A's story is not continuing. So all you have to do is go back to season 1 and see what happened to man A, because nothing else happened. Man A is still just sitting there. His story never evolved. So when you're like, well, man B said that this didn't happen, well, we can look back because man A is still sitting here with man B when you guys did that. Because he's never, man A's gone. Man A's story has stopped. So now you can clearly, much clearly, tell and detail the story of man A over man B, because man B has gone through a million things. Man B even changed his name to man W. So you can clearly see the story of man A. My point with that is Asher's story ended, so that was it. So because of this, all of the goddess and queen of heaven roles in like 80% of these pagan mythologies stop at a point. They all have the same stories, and they stop because it was so early in history still that their stories didn't get to continue evolving. And all of this really proves the Nephilim theory, because you can see it a lot clearer and see how it clearly connects to the Anunnaki. So, for example, in ancient Egypt, Osiris died and he was resurrected through Isis, but only long enough to father Horus. Horus then became the central god, taking Osiris's place as the ruler. Isis's role was static, though. She was only remembered for reviving Osiris and bearing Horus, but her character actually doesn't do anything else. In Mesopotamia, with the Anunnaki, El had two sons, Enlil and Enki. Over time, these gods merged into the god you may know as Marduk, who ended up being the chief god of Babylon and is mentioned in the Bible. Meanwhile, in all of this, El's wife, whose name was Asherah, remained the same, a static mother goddess who does not change. Like, everyone's story was the same because of the religious syncretism. This is all actually the Anunnaki story, because that was the first religion on this planet. So when people migrate and go to different countries, they continue the story in their new languages with their new culture. But it's all the same thing, because they couldn't evolve the goddess story anymore because nobody was worshiping goddesses. So they just continued evolving the story of their pagan gods and evolving their lives and different things happening to them. And then when they go to a new place, for example, the wars in Egypt and everything with Alexander the Great, where he essentially colonized ancient Egypt, and they took their gods more south. And you can see today in Sudan and in the more southern African countries and tribes, the stories are the same as the ancient Egyptian gods, because they had to go down there and they took their stories with them. And then I don't know if I mentioned this in the last video, but I'm pretty sure this video was banned by this woman who studies Egyptology on YouTube. But she showed how Isis had tribal markings on her face for the first time when the indigenous Egyptians were forced south because of Alexander the Great. They took Isis and everything obviously with them, but then they gave them more tribal markings because now they were in a different place. But like when you compare the spirituality of the ancient Greece, when you compare the spirituality of ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, you can see like there's way more going on with the male god figures. It's like you can't compare them and see like, oh, this is exactly this. But the female story is literally exactly the same because they didn't evolve because of patriarchy, is my point. So moving forward, my point with that is they're all one. Because of that, they're all one God, actually, in different languages, which is actually scary. That many different people around the world who don't even speak the same language are worshiping the same exact being and they don't know because they have different names. Well, she's called Callie here. Well, we call her Lilith here. But that sounds like the exact same person. But they are. They are. At the root, the exact same being. So that's dangerous because that's all the Queen of Heaven, and to bring it to the Hindu Trinity with Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. For that to have originally been Enki and Enlil and like El and Marduk and Baal, and then it people move and it migrates into other things to where today the voodoo gods in America are like strikingly similar to the family of the Hindu gods and the Egyptian idols and the Anunnaki. That's all one. That's the same family. So they're all one. And that's dangerous because Revelation 17 says that there will be a one world religion in the end times, symbolized as the great harlot. All throughout the Old Testament, harlotry was used as a picture of turning away from God and chasing after a false religion. People have argued for years over what exactly this end time religion will look like. Some say Catholicism, some say Islam, some say a New Age movement, or even some kind of new belief system. But in reality, it may not be hard to see how it's what's in our face. This New Age stuff where I believe in the universe and we're all one and we're all connected. Like, it's already being built in front of us because these pagan, even in Catholicism, as I showed you in the last video, they're all worshiping the same exact beings, the fallen angels. Revelation 17 explains this. It says that there's going to be a false religion that'll spread across every nation, language, and people group, given the authority by the Antichrist to unify the world under one single belief system. It won't just be spiritual, it'll have political power tied to kings, rulers, and governments. People will be drunk on his influence, blinded by the false promises of peace, unity, and power, while Satan just uses it to lead the world astray from worshiping God. So this the whole message of we are all one and we're all connected through the universe and all this literally fits perfectly into that. And it doesn't help that like all of these goddesses worshiped today, including Mary in Catholicism, is connected to the Queen of Heaven and all of the harlotry, that literally the end times warnings, right? Okay. And like I talked about a little earlier, a lot of people don't know that that belief that like, oh, we're all one and we can create our life, that's actually the earliest form of Satanism. The earliest witchcraft, the earliest Satanism practices and beliefs is that you are the God. We're all connected and we're one. You have the power. That is what Satanism is. They're not worshiping Satan like that. Not all of them. Not all of them. There are some connections between Satanism and Hinduism, which the original name for Hinduism is Sanatan Dharma. I think I'm saying that right. Sanatan Dharma. The word Satan is actually very common in Sanskrit, which is a Indian language. In this language, Satan means internal truth. And I'll make a video about this another time. I even fear it connects into the sacred geometry stuff people talk about, where they're like, well, they just worship these symbols, and a lot of people get them tattooed. There's one which I'll talk about another time. Like, this is just a side note, but this Metatron's cube, this idea of Metatron, and people think this is like an angel, and there's this like Metatron's cube that's like secret geometry, and it's supposed to prove that like how, because in nature there's geometry, so this is like proof of like how we're all connected, stuff like that. It's demonic. And Metatron, if you somebody that believes in Metatron and you somehow found this video, that is a lie. Enoch is not an angel now named Metatron. Stop it. And as I hinted at earlier, this idea of Lilith, that Lilith was Adam's first wife and she left him because she just did not want to submit to him, is not true. And that's based on Hinduism. In Hinduism, Shiva has a wife named Parvati. Hold on, what's her name? Parvati. And she has another side where she turns into Kali. And then Kali's rebellious. And then so because of religious synchronization and languages and stuff like that, that became a part of Jewish mysticism. But that's not in the Bible. And you can't just say it happened. A lot of people will say, well, the Bible talks about Lilith. Liliths are night demons. It doesn't say that's Adam's first wife. Oh, well, it says there was an owl. An owl is not Adam's first wife. I'm not sure. Somebody literally commented that on here, saying that because there was a Bible verse that said there was an owl in the night, that was Lilith. Again, all this information is in the book. And I also, at the end of the book, have all of the sources. And then, as we'll talk about at the end, the Nephilim Theory Club is open. So I'm going to be showing new facts, new sources, new evidence, and things that, like, I have to keep in a private group about this, all in the group. So we're going to be talking about that at the end. To kind of start wrapping this up, it's all Satan. It's not like nobody, no demon and all this. Don't focus more on that and think it's like more them than Satan. I'm not trying to say like Satan's innocent and it's actually this female demon that's actually doing anything. It's actually Asherah and Ishtar and the fallen angels. That it's the devil. So all of these things are like just masks of the devil, different masks he will use. And then we kind of get into talking about Baal and explaining who Baal is. And I will explain that Baal isn't a person. Like they'll say, this is Baal. So in Hebrew, Baal means Lord. That is a word. That's the kind of like how we were talking about earlier. And I do have, like, I'm gonna announce I got a Hebrew lesson coming. I do. But Baal means Lord. Don't let people say like, you cannot say Lord, like you cannot call Jesus Lord. Like I have a video on that on here if you're interested, because that is a scheme the devil set up to come to you with a key to hell, because it's this mumbo jumbo crap. I think they're calling it word salad. I don't know. The same stuff he did to Eve in the garden, saying like, well, you can't call Jesus Lord because Lord means Baal, and Baal was a false god that the Hebrews worshiped. No, that's not how that works. Baal means Lord. There were many Baals. So the main one I believe people talk about is Baal Hadad. He was one of the main ones that the Israelites were worshiping besides Baal. That was the golden bull. That was the first one that they just built. That was the only one that was called Baal. I don't think they called it Baal, the golden bull. That was the only, just by name, was Baal. Literally that golden bull, when Moses turned his back for 3 seconds and they went and did that. That is typically in relation to the Anunnaki Enlil. As I stated, Enlil and Enki eventually became Marduk. This religious synchronization stuff was normal. I know I'm kind of saying it like it's a conspiracy. That was normal back then. That's what they did. They just openly would do that. So that's why it's like this. Because they openly would just be like, oh, well, let's make this God now. Let's make him Marduk, and he's even more powerful. Like they just did that. That was one of the Baals that was married to Asherah as well, was Baal Hadad. Um, there's also a Baal Peor who I kind of get into in this book, which I don't know how much of that I'm going to talk about in this video, but that was the one that was making people do like sexual things. I have the meaning of that if you would like to look it up. Look it up because it's actually a little bit 18 plus information because the Israelites were disgusting. Is what I've learned. Like if I can summarize anything from all the theological studies I've done, the Israelites back then, I won't say where they were disgusting, but those men and where they were just like that's why God, like a lot of the rules, the most ridiculous things like that offend women that God said. God is telling the men, like, listen, she can't do this right now. You cannot lay with her right now. They were like, everything God said, they just were like, we're not going to listen to him. Or we'll listen to him now because he just got really mad at us. But like, give it some time and we're just not going to listen to him anymore. I don't get it. Every single time I get to I'm reading the Bible and they do something like that, I'm like, but then it's like I'm obviously being humble about it because it's like I don't know if it was me 10,000 years ago. I just like to think I would be a teacher's pet for Jesus and for God, you know, for the Holy Ghost and for the Father. But like I don't know, like I don't know why they were that stubborn. Like it's just interesting. Um, but so yeah, like I ended off by saying like it's bad. Like that's why you don't want to worship these beings because they don't like you. They want to see you suffer and they'll convince you that this was a ritual you needed for power. And I know you've heard of that. That sounds familiar. There's a whole thing with that Epstein stuff with that, and they were worshiping the beings I just talked to you about. If you look into the building, look at the symbols around, the sculptures around. In fact, just look at like I don't know the Emmys. Look at the Grammys. Look at where they're holding these events and look at the rooms. Look at what's on the ceiling. When you go to the House of the Blues, look around at the art. These people have odd amounts of fame and fortune. Some of them don't even do anything for it. And it's odd, isn't it? I put some things in this book because I don't know if you saw my community page. I'm just graduated. I'm a biblical scholar, but I have a focus in psychology, in the psychology of ministry, the psychology of the church, and a lot of other things. But my point is, I have in here some stories of victims of ritual abuse from these people who worship these things and these people. Particularly in the video, it was Satanist. It was Satanist abuse. Satanism is not funny because they pick they pick people that are not old enough to be able to know what's going on because they feel like that's the best way. I have a quote in here from Aleister Crowley, who's a well-known Satanist that a rapper, a very popular rapper for some reason, seems to be a fan of and associates with people that he associated with. He was talking about in this book about how if you can do a sacrifice of a person because that's the best way to get power, you get the most power from a young male. Okay, so what do you think that the Israelites were doing? This is why God was so upset. These people do things. It's stories. The Ishtar's cult Ishtar's cult and the Asherah cult. First of all, the Asherah poles, people were doing it at the pole. I don't know if you know that. That was kind of like the offering. All of this saying this is God's wife. On top of that, it's written from someone who was able to go to Iraq when it was like they were still doing worship of the Babylonian gods. And they, like, the way, I don't know how much I talked about in the last book, but, or in the last video, but they call it sacred P word, and they just believe, they convince young women that you need to do this and let this man give you money for it. And then that's the only way that you can be accepted by this God. Does that not sound like something some man made up? Wow, people always want to talk about Christianity is so wrong, I guess. I remember one time somebody said something like that to me, like, well, the Church of Satan is being nicer and donating, when somebody called a Christian church and they said that they couldn't donate anything. What are you talking about? You don't understand what the Satanists and Satan is really about. Oh, he does bad things. He's cool. No. I'm talking about slow torture. Like the stuff I have accounts in this book, by the way, the Nephilim theory. If you missed the first video, I'll have the link in the description below on Amazon, but it's also on my website to check it out, because I really don't want to read these accounts, because I feel like that's exploitive of these people's stories. But just to transition from that, that is another reason why God was that way about homosexuality. A lot of people don't know that there was that Baal Peor, that was like what they did, and it was like the worship was more about being in the feminine position, if that makes sense. And it was about that. I don't want to talk too much about it. It was about that, and that men need to. And so to move forward even further, it's linked to what's called phallocentrism, which is something that's taking over America right now. This belief that male pleasure is the center of the universe. It is not. Everybody is not here to please you, to make you feel good. I mean, that's not what this video is about, but I'm just saying, if you don't like women, that's not good. That's not a straight thing to do. Constantly making a career out of trying to convince men that they should hate women and do these red pill things and think that we can't see it, and testing women all the time, trying to make them feel bad to see if they'll leave you, if that's a sign to do. That's phallocentrism. You're valuing the man above the woman. You're valuing your pleasure above everything else in the universe. God did not make you for that, and God is the center of this universe. It's really scary. Like a lot of the societal beliefs, it's dangerous. And I'm not even going to kind of put it in a point where it's like, you guys are doing this to women. I think there's a lot of men that are afraid of some men at this point. And that basically wraps up the book. Oh, I kicked the camera. That basically wraps up the book. At the end of the book, I have all my sources in. I have some prayers, and then just kind of explaining the psychological view of why this is important, and why we need to care about our youth and our children and protect them, especially in the church. Stand up for them, protect them, and be a listening ear. And don't automatically think people are lying to you when they tell you something that sounds crazy. Thank you. Thank you so much for sticking with me through the Nephilim theory overview. I know I'm late. I've been going through a whole lot. But it's like for the best kind of thing. You know what I mean? So real quick, govasana.com. I have another video coming out where I will just only be talking about that. But in the description below, you will see the link to my website that I have recently upgraded. It's still in beta mode, but it's ready. So if you want to go on there and sign up, some things that I think you'll be interested in. When you go to the rooms in the membership area, if you go to Bible Study Hall, we have a chat there, and I have some very interesting posts there as well. If you go to the research room, I have some really interesting posts there as well, and there's a chat. I will be updating my blog daily. I've been updating it regularly. There's clubs there. As I stated a little earlier, if you have purchased the Nephilim Theory, leave a comment and let me know that you signed up. Let me know your username or send me a message. You can message me directly in my website now. I set up like my own Discord basically. It's just on my website. So just send me a message, let me know so I can put you into the group. I have 3 groups. Well, I have 2 groups besides that. One is called the Researchers and one is called the Gova Gang. In the Researchers group, I will be putting private research and private media into there. It's private because a lot of these things, I get censored. At all. So I do. I have a lot of things to share that have even been scrubbed. And I keep the data to myself. But I think some things I want you to be able to keep as well. I want you to be able to save it to your phone. And that's the researchers group. The Gova Gang will be a group where you can know everything I'm doing, basically. Like, because I do a lot of things, and you will see in this next month, I do a lot of things, but all updates. And if you even have some suggestions for the website, we can talk about that in the Gova Gang room. Like both clubs have their own room. The researchers room has like an extra page, but in the Gova Gang, we'll be talking about all that. And I'll be showing you guys things early that are coming on the site, videos that are coming out here early. I don't know, like my personal life, and then also my projects I do. That's all in the Gova Gang. So, and it's also just a big help to support me as well in this ministry because we're really just getting started. So, yeah, I hope that you have enjoyed this video and enjoyed this overview. Yeah, and I'll see you next time. Bye.